looking up that high. It's good to see you online. And to those of you in the assembly in this room tonight, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited for you because you're here. After last week, I felt so scattered talking about Samuel and Saul and David that I'm thankful tonight our primary focus is just David. But there's still so much to focus on. And with the time I see on my wristwatch, aka my time machine, I notice that we have a good portion of time, no time to waste, but enough time to get to all that, Lord willing, has been prepared. Do you remember last week, 1 Samuel? Now, 1 and 2 Samuel was originally one big Hebrew book on one big scroll. But 1 Samuel, that portion of his documents and writings, was mainly focused on how Samuel anointed Saul. I think of 1 Samuel and I think of the phrase of what the people would say. We want to be like other nations. Give us a king. And I tell you what, we want Saul to be our king. God says through Samuel, all right, this is premature, but I'll let you. But you're not going to like it. As we learn case by case, account by account, the chronological flow of events, you just can't help but look back and have a topographical view, let's say a bird's eye view, and see what history would have been like if they had just followed God's way all the way through, and if his people would have just been evangelistic to represent God, to bring all the world to him, even before the Christ. Can you imagine? Well, the same message applies to the church today. Just hold that thought. So, Samuel anoints Saul, but how sad that Israel's first king becomes so arrogant and selfish that he began to care more about his throne than God's. And, sad to say, he doesn't seek God's will, so he's upset with the successes that God is giving David. So for 10 years, he tries to kill David. And even while Saul is king, Samuel is called by God to anoint David as the next king at the proper time. David is to be the next king, even during Saul's reign. So as we see 2 Samuel, the bar showing where we are getting to tonight, it centers on the saga of David. Saul has died in battle, and his sons as prophesied. David is also mourning the death of Jonathan, his virtuous son, who admired David very much for his role, but also was loyal to his dad, as he should be. Interesting. Here's a list on the screen that I will have in completion for you by the time the next volume is produced for the next quarter, the second half of our study. But to this point so far, it kind of shows where we've been. So that one line shows each book. And I think we won't do this every week, but I wanted to show you what's coming, and you'll have this accessible to you. Genesis tells how God's relationship with the world began and the origin of the nation of Israel. Exodus, God saves Israel from Egyptian slavery, then starts a special relationship with them. The special relationship had to be a sanctified people living holy lives, the holiness code, Leviticus. God gives instructions on how to worship him, and I might later add, how to live righteously. Numbers, the wilderness wanderings. They failed to trust and obey God, and that was the consequence for 40 years. Deuteronomy, repeating of the law again to the generation that will be going into the promised land. If you want God's blessings, follow him. Joshua. Is it cut off on that side? Oh, yeah, you see the more screen. On this monitor, it's a little widescreen, but that's only on this screen. Joshua, he leads the Israel to conquer Canaan and begins the dividing of the land among the 12 tribes. Judges, that whole era, Israel cycles from worshiping God, but then falling away, and then suffering, and then repenting, and then deliverance, and then cycle repeats over and over, I think 8 or 9 times. Ruth was in the same period, and it's about 2 widows who lose it all but find hope, leading to King David. King David. So now 1 Samuel, Israel demands a king, but is quite disappointed. Samuel, 2 Samuel, the part 2, It's all about David, a man after God's own heart. What does that mean? Well, it means two things, really, but we'll focus on that as we go. He becomes king of Israel after Saul, but it didn't happen instantly, and he didn't win everyone's hearts like you would think until a little bit later. And it's sad that they had to fight amongst themselves. I would say that's another story, but that's our story tonight. So, as we look at 2 Samuel, we have some readings, and I want to encourage you to keep them up, whether they're before or after. It takes about 2 hours for this entire book, but if you read those key chapters, a little bit less. Some of you say you love to hear, some of you say you love to read. You learn better that way, audible, visual, whatever. But these outlines, as you toggle between the two, will help you stay focused. And I've heard from some of you say, wow, these readings are intense. And yeah, this was reality. All the wars that they fought, so sad. If they had just cleansed the land by God's judgment to begin with in the era of conquest, it would have been so much better. But then they had to fight to purge the land of those who oppressed them, and that wouldn't have even happened. And consequences from not following God's will. But we have some great, beautiful stories tonight to study. I'm looking forward to it. Here's some review. The book of the law, the Pentateuch, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. We're entered into the period of Hebrew history, already up to 2 Samuel. And we're seeing how Jesus is the true prophet, priest, and king. Everything in the Old Testament is a shadow of the substance of Christ, a foretelling of things to come. We will see even more tonight how Jesus is the king of all, heaven and earth. The United Kingdom, this is a list I borrowed. I'll deal with the discrepancies later. But these are some books that deal with this period of the United Kingdom, the monarchy of Saul, David, and Solomon. 1 Samuel, 1 Kings, 1 and 2 Chronicles. Psalms were written a lot by David, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Solomon, of course. So from this point forward, some of these books are going to be like shuffled together. And there's a chronology of books that's listed for you. I may give it later as well. Sometimes when the books were written doesn't actually refer to the events of which it's writing about. So the chronology of events is what this chart is about. And simply put, the United Kingdom is the establishment of it and then the division of the kingdom after Solomon's death. That's what's happening here. Let's do this 3-minute Devo. And I want you to notice the bottom left of the Old Testament line, third line down when it shows the crowns. And the in-house crowd will see this little red dot for ever so briefly a moment because as the video is playing, I've wanted a reason, an excuse to use this laser pointer keychain lightsaber. I've wanted to use this lightsaber handle, which is a red laser pointer, for a very